Our very special guest this evening is Dr. Eric L. Davis. Tonight we'll be talking about his first book, The Bible and Addiction Recovery. The book takes us on a trip through the biblical aspects evident in the 12 steps and a multitude of other recovery principles. These include the power of belief, faith, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, sponsorship, gratitude, surrender, making amends, letting go of resentments, and much more. It also contains reference to Scripture, as well as several practical exercises and examples that can be used in groups and individual therapy sessions. It's a useful tool for therapists, counselors, ministers, lay people, and individuals in recovery alike. Now, Dr. Davis is currently penning his second book, Drunk Dad, Sober Dad, due to be published soon. Now, Eric is also a musician. He's a singer, guitarist, and drummer who's played in many local bands throughout Indiana. He has a wonderful family, whom he loves very much, as well as a very beautiful wife, Erin, and two lovely children, Levi and Maddie. Okay, so here we go. Dr. Davis is a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed clinical addiction counselor, an internationally certified gambling counselor, a board-approved clinical consultant, and is a certified domestic violence batterers intervention program senior facilitator. Now, he's been featured in radio, TV, the Indy Star, USA Today, and also in the New York Daily News. He's a regular trainer for the Indiana Office of Court Services and has been a guest speaker and presenter at numerous conferences at universities, churches, courts, probation offices, hospitals, and treatment facilities. Now, in 2004, he co-founded the Life Recovery Center, for which he's the executive director. So tonight we're going to talk about the journey of addiction, from both the medical and a religious side. Now, if you know someone who has an addiction problem, I urge you to continue listening to the show tonight and to what Dr. Davis has to say. Because as you will learn, Dr. Davis knows firsthand the devastation addiction can cause. See, Dr. Davis is currently in long-term recovery himself. Now, after watching that, you understand when I started going through your titles, why I have to pre-record that, because that took me like 7 times to make it through that entire thing. Eric, thank you for joining us on the show here today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on. Now, if I remember correctly, it was 2017 that you got married, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Just say yes, because I know we forget those things. And you don't want to get in trouble for it. For those that, I guess I got to come off right away and let you know, Eric's brother Adam is a very close friend of mine. He's a chiropractor, also my chiropractor. Okay, he's been for years, and used to be a paranormal investigator with us as well. You also have sisters, that's correct, Lynn and Sindel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, your parents are great people. I love them.
I agree.
Yeah, I know you agree, but think about it. I'm not in the family, okay, and I think they're great people. Okay, as were your grandfather and your grandmother as well. But besides that, tell the audience a little something about yourself, and then you can explain those multitude of titles
Okay.
that I just went through, because I don't know what half of them be.
All right, no problem. So, well, I'm Eric Davis, and like Steve said, I founded Life Recovery Center in 2004, and my recovery journey started in 1999. So it was June 7th, 1999, when everything began. And, it's been a bumpy ride at times, but I would not change a thing. So as far as, credentials, so I'm a clinical social worker and a clinical addiction counselor, which basically means I can operate unsupervised. So it means I'm an independent practitioner in the state of Indiana. And then the that's one of the newest things that I did was got the gambling certification, and that's with the changing legalities and things, I'm seeing a lot more regarding gambling. So anytime I'm up against some sort of a problem or a new adversary, if you will, I try to learn as much as I can about it and come out of my side of the ring swinging. So there's that. And then with the batterer's intervention, basically what that means is if there is a domestic violence charge, so I work with the abuser. So if there's violence in the home or abuse of some kind, I work with the person, the perpetrator, and that's really been some really rewarding work. I really enjoy that. Just seeing the light bulbs go off and watching people change. It's pretty awesome.
I know a few people that are in your line of work, and they all say the same thing. Whereas it may take them a lot of their personal time, they love what they're doing because you're helping other people, and that's really a lot of people. Sometimes even with us, ask us about the paranormal. Why the heck do we still do it? Because I'm helping somebody else. And it's kind of funny because we're going to be in the religious mode today. I always ask the same question, what would Jesus do? Okay? If Jesus said, hey, I need you to come to my house, my kids are affected, blah, 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 would Jesus say, oh, too bad, call this guy, No, he'd go and help. So, yeah, I get, that rewarding feeling when you go and help. Now, going to jump around a little bit, and I apologize for that.
No problem.
But I think it's going to set the stage for the show, if anything. Now, I'm also reading over this way. The folks, somebody asked me the other day, why am I looking in the opposite direction? Well, I look in the opposite direction because that's where my notes are. Over here, and that's also where Yahoo is, YouTube is over here. So, okay, in the book, the Bible and Addiction Recovery. Now you quote two Bible passages, which I have to read now, so I really have to look over this way.
Right.
Okay, who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine go to the sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it's red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights, and your mind images confusing things. You'll be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on the top of the ringing. They hit me, you say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When I wake, so I can't find another drink. And that's from Proverbs 20, chapter 23, verses 29 and 35. And the second one, do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit. Speak to one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Sing and make music in your hearts to the Lord. Always give thanks to God the Father for everything, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's from Ephesians chapter 5, 18 to 20. Now, to our audience, help them first. First I want to say to the audience, a lot of people get a little confused by when they see wine in the Bible. Okay, well, Jesus drank wine too, so was he an alcoholic too? No, back in those days, the wine was actually used to not purify the water, but make it safe to drink. Because they didn't have purification systems like we have. So, yeah, they mixed the wine in there to make the water a little more. But what he's talking about is those that just take the jug and go walking away with the jug. Okay, what both of those actually set the stage for what you do in your practice. Why did you, is that the reason why you included those to start off the book with?
Yeah, because part of it was I wanted to, begin by illustrating that addiction it's not something new. It's been around forever. I mean, and that's something that's always interesting, is just looking at the history like of addiction treatment. There's a great book by a guy named William White called Slaying the Dragon, and it's all about addiction treatment in Indiana. But that's why I wanted to include that, because it's like, look, addiction was talked about even back then, and the dynamics of alcoholism were the same back then. It's like how every time you drink, everything goes wrong, but you wake up and say, where can I find another drink?
I've met many people that way, that would literally pass out and get up the next morning looking for, the little roach that was sitting there in the ashtray,
Yeah.
or looking for any half empty glasses to start drinking.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, didn't you drink enough last night? And they're like, no, no, no. This just takes the edge off the day. Yeah, okay, if you have to wake up starting to drink, you got a problem.
Yeah.
And it's kind of really weird, and this may have nothing to do with this, but right in front of me here, I just got the smell of cigarette smoke. Now, understand, I have not smoked in 12 years, 13 years,
Mm-hmm.
okay? It's making me think, is somebody trying to point out other addictions, or is it person I'm thinking of that has an addiction, had an addiction that's passed, that's here with us now? It's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because he did have an alcohol problem. Um, okay, so you say there's a demon plaguing the earth even today. Trust me, I see them more than you do.
I bet.
And I've met more than one of them, trust me. And its name is addiction. But like any demon's hold on someone, that person can be saved from God's, from its jaws by God. Explain what you mean by that.
So that's part of my story has to do with that. And, without going too far down the rabbit hole, basically in a nutshell, when I was ready to change, basically I had tried everything I could do to stop drinking and drugging, everything I could think of, and every plan I had failed miserably. So basically I remember I was at the University of Indianapolis at the time because I was in college, and I went into the little chapel there, which I need to go by there and see if I haven't seen the chapel in years. I wonder if it's still where it was. But I went in there, nobody was in there but me. And I mean, I was just desperate. I hated myself. I had thought about, I was having thoughts of, well, everybody'd be better if I wasn't around. And so anyway, it was a foxhole prayer. It was like, okay, God, if you're out there, please help me. I cannot, I need your help. I can't stop on my own. And lo and behold, about 3 days later, I got arrested. And that got my attention,
Caught a couple of people's attention, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was actually in 97. So in 97 is when I initially got in trouble. I went through treatment, and then when I got out of treatment, it was like, oh, well, hey, now that I've got this drug addiction taken care of, I can just drink. And it was the same, same pattern, different substance. So that's where, like what I love about the Bible more than anything is when we pierce the veil a little bit and look at like the practical application, or, and that's what it is. It's basically love and connectedness can conquer anything.
Now, were you religious before you went in that chapel?
No, not at all. No, I mean, I had grown up, I was raised Catholic, and I had, I would go to church with my grandma, and I was an altar boy. But no, I mean, the truth was I was not overly invested, and that's kind of where really how the book came about was I had been in recovery for a while and had learned, I was working steps and all that, going to meetings, and I had learned all these principles of recovery, and then I started looking at religion again, And it was like, wow, when I revisited the Bible, it was like all these things that we do in recovery are right here. I just didn't
Hmm.
understand it that way before.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to go that route because if they've never been involved in religion, all of a sudden, here we're going to throw, biblical verses at you,
Yeah.
as I've done here to people, and it's like, well, wait a minute. And even today, we see how many people are backing away from, you know, I don't know, it just seems a new generation just doesn't want anything to do with religion right now. Have you found that a problem in practice that people don't really want religion?
Yes and no. So what I have found, and keep in mind that Life Recovery Center is a secular
Right.
agency. So
Hmm.
basically, the only time I ever talk about my faith or anything is if a client specifically asks me. So, and it's only in individual sessions. I don't ever talk about, Jesus and all that in
Oh,
like a group therapy session. So what I found is that I can always talk about the message. If people are open to the message, a lot of people start to block things out when it gets specific about the messenger, so that, and something that I really came to understand through the years is, Bill Wilson and Bob Smith, the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why really, there is definitely a Christian, um, foundation there with
basis
a lot
to
of
it, right?
things,
Hmm.
but they really did try to keep the religious specifics out of it because they wanted AA to be available to everybody, and
Right.
I really do think that there's a lot to be said for that, in truth, because if someone blocks me out before I can even talk to them, they're not going to hear anything I have to say.
Hmm. And with religion, for some reason, it seems to do that to people. A lot of people shy away from it. But here's the other thing I've seen, and it drives me bonkers, is that when people say, well, okay, we'll use an example, okay, just because there's no one else here. Well, if he would have just put the stupid drink down, he wouldn't have had a problem.
Hmm.
Or same thing, if he didn't smoke or whatever, okay, he can make that choice, okay, and that choice is something addiction. You get away from your addiction. He's just addicted to wanting to party. How do we change America to? I think it's slowly starting to happen, but to realize that this addiction is a disease.
It would take an entire paradigm shift, and that's the problem that we're up against. Something I really like talking with my clients about is the stigma of addiction. And I always say, I kind of argue both sides, so to speak, because I say, okay, let's talk about why that stigma might exist. If I turn on the news and someone robbed a pharmacy, for example, because they are addicted to opiates, and they went in there and they said, give me all the opiates, well, then they get arrested. And the news story is going to be about, what happened. They're going to talk to the people who were victimized, how scared they were. This person is an addict. And the part of the story that doesn't get told is, oh, hey, yesterday, a therapist in Indianapolis, Eric Davis, thought long and hard about using for about 10 minutes, but he called his sponsor and made it through just fine. Like that's not exciting. That's not blood and guts.
Hmm.
So in all fairness, all of the things that society sees as a whole really are, they look like bad choices. I
Well,
mean, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say it's more too. They also don't look at the fact that there's a doctor at one point that prescribed these opioids to
Yeah,
somebody and
exactly.
got them hooked on it.
Yeah. And I think that, so going back to the paradigm shift, the way I explain that, and we may have talked, you and I may have even talked about this before, but basically what I tell my clients is when we talk about addiction as, um, as as human beings, it's typically in the context of chemical dependency. So if I say, oh yeah, I knew a guy and he was addicted to heroin. Well, what I'm usually saying is the person was using heroin. If they stop, they go into withdrawal and they get sick. So I've been a philosophy or a way of looking at it that I've found beneficial for me, even just as a person in recovery, is I say, although chemical dependency and addiction go hand in hand, more often than not, they're actually two entirely separate things. So there are some differences. Chemical dependency is completely and totally curable. If someone goes into detox, by the time they leave, their chemical dependency is cured. They're no longer chemically dependent. The doctor has mitigated the withdrawal as best they can. And so then the question is, well, if it's not chemical dependency, then what in the world is addiction? And so my definition of addiction is, and pardon me, I'm going crazy. Every time the weather fluctuates 10 degrees or more, I seem to
Allergies, yep.
have a cough.
It's that warm water you're drinking there.
Yeah, it probably is. But basically, so addiction it's the thinking and behaviors that existed before I ever use a drug, all the while I use a drug, and even after I stop using a drug. I haven't been chemically dependent in decades, but I struggle with the disease of addiction right here on a daily basis. I mean, that's I've built my entire life around addiction recovery. So obviously it's something that I talk about every day, but it's my thinking still, it still attacks me.
Well, I know even, and it's not the same, but it's similar addiction itself with cigarettes. Okay, I was one who smoked like three and a half packs a day. Okay, now I haven't smoked. We talked about that, before we came on. It's been almost like 18, 19 years, okay, that I've given it up. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't see somebody with a cigarette in their hand, that for that flash of a second, that I don't think about, I could use one of those right now. And then it's like, no, okay. Because I do have a very addictive personality, and if I smoke one, I'll be smoking 3 packs by the end of the week. And today's Thursday. So, there's just no way, I would touch something like that.
Yeah.
And you actually answered the question I was going to ask you. See, you were a step ahead of me, didn't even realize it. Because I was going to ask the similarities as well as the differences between addiction and chemical dependency. But I like the term that you use in the book called equal opportunity destroyer.
Yeah.
Because equal opportunity destroyer says so much to the people, not only the person that is fighting the addiction, but to the family and loved ones around them.
Yeah, the families, the families are the true. No one asks for addiction, but the family members are the ones that truly are the victim, because it's watching your loved one battle with an invisible thing that hurts them terribly, and you can't fight it for them. I know that a lot of family members, it's a real struggle.
Well, I would think for any family member it's a struggle. I mean, we even talked about before we went on the air about the IPF is a struggle for family members around me, because they're watching. I did trim my beard for all those that they're doing that. I was at a wedding Sunday. They thought Grizzly Adams had escaped or something, but I just watch people around. See, I'm an observant person like you. I can sit in a room where there's 50 people and not say a word. But I'm watching every single person, watching most interactions that are taking place, and it's actually pretty interesting, the stuff you learn from that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so another thing that jumped out at me in the book, it says, addiction is very much like an allergy. Now, I've seen people try drugs and alcohol thinking, maybe, like you said, maybe this will be okay instead. It is the power of addiction that strong that you start to lose track of, well, stupid, if I do that, I'm going to have a problem again.
Well, that's part of the dynamic. So in answer to the question, yes, addiction is that powerful. Part of the dynamic of addiction is it's one of the only illnesses that constantly tells us we don't have it. And so the example I use a lot of times is if you have the flu, which we've all had the flu at one, God forbid, at one time or another, and anytime I've ever had the flu, I don't wonder if I'm sick or not. I know with every sick cell of my being that I am, that I feel terrible and I'm sick. But with addiction, it's the denial, the denial, the minimizing, justifying, making excuses. The denial is really, that's kind of how it attaches to us. I guess it would be a way of saying that. And that's part of what is different from an allergy. But with an allergy, I mean, I've always thought addiction was very similar because if you're allergic to peanuts, for example, well, how do you discover that? Well, you eat peanuts and you break out or you go to the hospital. That's the only way somebody knows. And I'm a firm believer that addiction is something that we're either born with or not. Chemical dependency can develop, but I think there are probably people in the world that may be the most chronic alcoholic, for example, that we've ever known of, but they have no idea, and neither does anybody else because they never took that first drink.
So, do you think part of it's hereditary?
Yeah, there's definitely a hereditary component. In summary, the research basically says it's 50-50. It's 50% hereditary, 50% socialization. So, it's 50-50 nature nurture. What happens, though, is regardless of how the addiction is tripped, and like you said, there are a lot of individuals that, they have a sports injury or something. And, if you tear your hamstring, aspirin might not do the trick, so the doctor whose job it is to treat pain says, okay, here, take some of these. The problem with opiates, for example, is there's no way to take them long term or even really short term without developing a dependency. There's just no way. And so a lot of individuals kind of open Pandora's box, so to speak, wrapped in that medical gift wrapped, or if you will. And once that switch is flipped, there really isn't, you can't go back to the thinking before,
Right.
It's just kind of, it's there. It's like it progresses and there really isn't any reverse. There's only a forward.
See, I recently went through with my back. I've had some back issues, and the ER doc prescribed me an opioid. Oh, actually, no. Let me rephrase that. He gave me a narcotic. Okay, and I told him straight out down, I don't want a narcotic. And he said, well, you have your choice. You go home and be in pain, or you go home with narcotics. See how it starts. So I was like, okay. So after about 2 or 3 days, I called my regular general practitioner and said, yo, he's got me on a narcotic, and I don't want to be on a narcotic.
Yeah.
So she put me on an opioid for a bit. Well, luckily, I went to see a pain doctor about 4 or 5 days later, and the first words out of his mouth was, stop taking that. And I was like, okay. He goes, do you know why I'm telling you to stop taking it? And I was like, I can think of a number of reasons, but I'm sure you have a good one. He says, because in a month you're going to come back to me and say, I need more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Because you're not going to get that same feeling. Same thing with an addict, is reaching for that high. Okay, and they're always going for that first high that they got, and they're going to keep going back. So I know a little about it, some from personal experience, some from that, but you're always going back to that, wanting that initial high. And luckily he was smart and took me out of it and just said, okay, he says, here's the deal. He says, you had, I think it was like 10 left. He says, I'll let you keep those 10. He said, and I'll even give you a prescription of them. He says, but He said, here's the deal. He says, you call me and ask me for more before we've passed like 3 months. He says, you ain't getting them.
Mhm.
He says, and then when I give you like 15 of them, he says, you have at least again another like 4 or 5 months before I'm going to give it to you again. So I haven't taken them at all. Okay, because I know I'm an addictive personality, and I know, heck, they felt really good. They got rid of the pain. Okay, and my first complaint was, well, what are you going to give me instead? That addict instinct. Okay, what are you going to replace the drug with? Okay, with something else. And my wife was very smart to see it and realize it too. And before I allowed my brain to go there, I pulled it right back and said, we ain't going down this street, okay? This is not why I went to you. I didn't. I literally said every time I went in there, I didn't come here for drugs. I came here for pain relief. Tell me what's wrong, and let's figure out a way to fix it. So we're actually going to do a steroid injection that should actually work better and a little more long term. Plus, with your brother's chiropractic, I should be okay for that. So I get that. You
Yeah.
know what's going on with that. Now, in the book, you have, what was it, 12 steps, I believe?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go to step one. And we're only going to cover, to those that are listening, we're only going to cover 3 steps. Okay, and we're going to delve a little into each of those 3 steps. But then, really buy the book to go through the rest. Otherwise, we'll be on here like 3 or 4 hours doing
Or
a podcast.
my
Hey,
students at the class, the university students that I teach, I've had them kind of tease me and say, "Man, sometimes you make us sorry we asked a question." So
well, yeah, but I don't want to go 4 hours, okay? Your
yeah.
voice and my voice, neither one of us is going to make it. Okay, step one, we're powerless over addiction.
So the where I always start with that is, in the Bible it talks about basically in our human inadequacy, you know, God makes us perfect, and so it's kind of like in my powerlessness is where I find my power. And that really is where addiction, or let me say, that's where recovery really starts. So it's not, I always point out to clients that it doesn't say I'm helpless against addiction, and it doesn't say power none, it's powerless. So what that means is anytime I try to square off with addiction, it's going to be more powerful than me. And that's why we have a saying in the fellowships, surrender to win. The example that I always give with step one is, and I always just say Mike Tyson because that's from my day. I mean, he is a tough dude.
Yeah, I
Um,
was going to ask you, that's my next question about the analogy with Mike Tyson.
yeah. So what I always say is if I got in a ring with Mike Tyson, and I always say, look, I have some tattoos, but he got a tattoo on his face,
Please.
So I mean, Mike Tyson's no joke. I mean, obviously. And so, and sometimes clients will say, well, he's older now. And it's like, I don't care how old he is. If I get in a ring with him, what's going to happen? And oh, he's going to beat the heck out of you. So let's say that he beats me up. They scoop me up off of the ring. They wheel me to the hospital, stitch me up, bring me back. And I don't know, 6 months later, Mike Tyson and I have a rematch. Obviously, I'm going to lose again. So then there's a third time, and I say, okay, this time I'm going to train for 5 years solid. And so is Mike Tyson, but we're going to have a rematch again. After the third, fourth, fifth time, at some point I have to realize, like, I can't beat Mike Tyson in a wrestling match. So what power do I have? Well, I get to decide if I get in the ring or not. So it really is like that, where something that cracked me up, and it goes back to, with step one, with powerlessness. The class I was talking about, it's probably been a few years ago at this point, but I was putting my syllabus together for the upcoming class. And I remember it was the weirdest thing. I'm sitting right here, right here. This is my home office, working on the syllabus. And a thought, it was like a lightning bolt, bam, into my head. And I remember thinking, literally, I thought, dude, You're literally teaching the class on it. You are teaching the class. You could use without consequences now, and I had to kind of laugh to myself because it was like, no, no, I can't use without consequences. That's why I quit. But I mean, and that's what I'm saying, where that thinking, it's always there. That little voice, if you will, it's just always there. Um, the difference between now and years ago is I truly believe that I'm powerless against it.
I think we're all powerless against it without help.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want people to think it's a hopeless cause.
No, not at all.
Everything, yeah. Okay, but as far as, and I'm sorry I went off the screen there, one of my earpieces went out, and I still don't know where it went. And there isn't much room, so I have no clue where it went. It just was talking and it just popped right out of my ear. Uh, but, with help, we can, I just want to keep that, so if somebody's listening that has an addiction problem,
Mhm.
I want them to understand that no matter what their addiction is, there is help for you.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, you talk about this more than I do. So so what would you say right now? So we're just going to stop right here a second and pick right back up from there. But what would you say to someone who's listening right now, saying, this ain't going to work for me?
I would say don't give up before the miracle happens. Which I know sounds like a cheesy response, but it's true. And we're powerless against trying to control the addiction. What I mean by that is, if I set out to find a way to use like regular people, like it's like, okay, I've got a new plan. I'm going to just drink like a regular person. That I'm powerless over the drinking. That is never going to work out. But there is absolutely, so it's given up the use. That's what I'm powerless over. The beauty of recovery is, I mean, it only gets better and better. I mean, it really does. It's not perfect all the time. There's still, life happens and there's still struggles. But when we start, that was one of the things that I did, and I think one of the most important things that saved my life was, when I was finally done, and it was actually, ironically enough, like the icing on the cake. And it's kind of funny. It wasn't legal problems. It wasn't almost bombing out of school. It wasn't being suicidal. It wasn't hating myself. None of that stuff was the icing on the cake. What was the icing on the cake for me was showing up several hours late to Adam's high school graduation party.
Wow.
That, and people are like, why that? And I was just ready at that time. Something about seeing the faces of my family got my attention, and I was ready.
And you know what? Anyone that's got addiction problem right now, if you don't think your family sees it
Oh,
and reads it all over you, you're just kidding yourself. I know I've gone to many a party back years ago. Let's make sure we put that straight. Back years ago, wired to the T. Okay? And thinking, well, nobody knows, you know, that, I have a problem. But yeah, they could see it. Everybody knew, but they love you and
mhm,
they're just trying to be there to support you. But you have to ask for that help.
definitely. It, Part of what I did when I was really ready, I had gone to some meetings when I was in treatment. I went back to the meetings and I found some guys that I, knew, and I basically just told them, like, just tell me what to do. I give. I'm done trying to do this on my own, and I just, that there was a ready-made plan.
Hmm.
You know, now the thing is with like 12-step recovery, it's not everybody's thing. But it's what I found worked for me.
Right, and it has to be a personalized thing. It
Yeah.
has to be what's going to, like they say, ring your bell. and get you going. That's really can be taken wrong. And from that point, I'm going to go to step two.
Okay.
Okay, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
So it really has to do with the power of believing. You know, um, if I truly don't believe that things can ever be different, why would I try anything? You know, and it's basically what a lot of people get caught up on that. It's like, well, wait a minute, a power greater than myself, you know, really what that, in my interpretation, what that means is the answers cannot come from right here. This is the broken mechanism. This is the
Mm-hmm.
mechanism that is sick. So if I get my guidance from somewhere outside of me, things can be different, you know. And recovery is hard because it takes, a big dose of humility and willingness to try new things and so on and so forth.
See, that's what I was just going to say. Do you think a lot of people just don't want to admit they're broken? That
Yeah, I
something's
think it's
wrong, that they can't. See, I know myself from just in my situation, I wasn't, well, like I said, I wasn't addicted. Okay, every weekend I was partying like crazy. But I did not think I was broken, number one, which most addicts go to. But I would never accept the fact that I couldn't fix it myself.
yeah,
And you know yourself that's walked down that path that you have to realize that you can't sometimes fix it yourself. Doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a flawed person. It's just reality.
yeah, it really is. And having a belief that things can be different. So here's where people get caught up too. It says restore us to sanity. So that right there, it's talking about insanity, but it's important to understand that when it talks about sanity in the 12 steps, yes, it means the insanity of addiction, but I look at it as like, sanitas, I believe, is the Latin root of that means like clean or complete, perfectly whole and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically saying, I came to believe that doing things a different way than I have been can make me whole again, or basically can start to fix me, and that's the first three steps all take place in our mind, really. I mean, you have to, there's two ways you work steps, formally and informally, but you can work all three steps sitting in a chair.
Right. And the steps, it's easy for a person who's not addicted to read this and say, well, this is pretty easy, okay? No, it's not, okay? And I think the show is also great for, like you say, for ministers or anyone that's a counselor needs to know about this because that's the reason why I'm not going to go through the other nine right now. Okay, we've gone through three of them, and we're already at 8:45, and that's fine. We're not at a time crunch, but we could be here all night going through that, and I do have some other questions too.
Okay.
But for those that are thinking about it or want to know more about it, buy the book. Go back to our website, yourlifematterspodcast.com. Go to the books page and just click on his book, and it'll take you right to, I think it's Barnes and Noble. And you can purchase the book and have it in a couple of days, and you can read the other nine, okay? But I'm just kidding with them. Now, the 12 steps, the original 12-step program, has been helping people since 1935. And it's a miracle that happens over and over again every single day. Yet, incredibly, all a person must do for the steps to work in their life is to seek the help that they offer. Now, the same goes for the loving power of God. If we, there we go, quote again, if we wholeheartedly seek Him, we are guaranteed to find Him. Mark 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. My question when I read that was, okay, so we talked about secular people that are not into religion and those that do have a strong religious background. Do you find that they succeed faster than someone who maybe is not that religious?
It,
I know it's a tough.
yeah,
It's
I mean, it really does depend on the person. You know, I've met some individuals that have very strong religious convictions, and that was really an asset to them in their recovery. But I've also, worked with clients that were basically like, don't want to hear anything religious, you know, don't want to go there, don't care, and they were able to find recovery. So it's really it really is about seeking the answers, and it's about making the effort toward finding those answers. Recovery doesn't just show up at the door. You have to go find it. you know
see, I've always come from the school. God is inside yourself. Okay, so whether you are non-religious or Christian, it's still inside yourself that you're looking for this recovery, and you have to look inside yourself. You have to see yourself. You know, we joked about the beard trimming. Okay, after I saw a picture that everybody, oh, you guys look great. You and Jen look fantastic, and I'm looking at it like, when did the ape escape from the zoo? Okay, it's just like the sides are all out all
yeah.
over the place, and I've trimmed it down now. Oh, if I lose this one, I'm out of luck because then I won't eat you. There's almost one flying out of my ear. So, I get it. It's all inside of us. Now, I want to go into Life Recovery Center. How did this go about that you started Life Recovery? Who you started it with? And I know you even have some news even about that.
Yeah. So Life Recovery Center really came about. A friend of mine that I met through, through recovery program. His name's Tom Prendergast. He is one of my dearest friends in the entire world. Just an all-around great, great guy. And we worked together at Harbor Light Center. We worked together at Fairbanks. So we were both addiction counselors. And we really just started talking kind of as friends, started talking about how, man, it was heartbreaking to us that a person, if a person didn't have money, they couldn't access treatment a lot of times. And it's kind of like, well, I mean, by the time we're ready to seek help, typically everything's in disarray, not just relationships and self-esteem and all that, but employment, finances. And so we really started out with our intention was, we're going to start an agency, and I never dreamed it would be what it is today. It's kind of wild when I look back on it, but it was just about, we'll charge, we'll make it cheap, where people can access it. And if they don't have any money, we'll probably still treat them anyway. And that it really just grew from there, because we wanted to make our mark. We wanted to do what we could for the community. And through the years, it just grew and grew. And, now we're in 4 locations. In Indianapolis, we had 5 locations at one point before COVID. And our services have expanded to include, like I was talking about, domestic violence and, problem gambling.
Mm-hmm.
So the most recent development, though, is in July, Tom was ready. He's basically ready to retire. He was like, yeah, I'm ready to focus on other stuff. And it was like, all right, no problem. So we ended up coming to an agreement, and I purchased his shares. And one of the things I'm grateful for, people say, well, what happened? It's like, no, it wasn't, it was a mutual thing. This is good news. He's fine, but that's just a testament to how much everybody cares about him, because
Well,
he is
yeah.
a great guy. you
Now,
know?
I got a question, and I thought about earlier on when you asked this, and I'm surprised I didn't write it in my list of questions. But I hear this a lot. How did you go from being the addict to the addiction counselor? Because that's a jump.
Yeah. It, I knew for a long time that I wanted to work with people. I had that much figured out, um, to a degree. But it's kind of like, the way I say it is I didn't choose this line of work. It kind of chose me, or that's kind of how it feels, because it's the one area of my life where I could take the worst, most terrible stuff that I've ever been through and actually, use that experience and the education to help people, you know. So it really, it's kind of like my experiences. I knew I wanted to help people, but through my own experiences, that's really what led me in the direction to pursue addiction specifically.
See, I've noticed that a lot when, even like you're watching TV shows and stuff, and they're talking different counselors and stuff, and you find most of them have had addiction problems in the past. And I think it's great because I think you can relate much more, understand what's going on with the person. We talked about even like my IPF earlier, okay? And when people don't understand, they understand the disease, but they don't understand what we're going through.
Yeah.
And that's the same way, and that's what made me think of that. It's basically the same thing. You know what someone's feeling even right when they're talking to you. You know the thoughts that are racing through their heads
Hmm.
because for a long time it takes a while to slow that thing down, slow
Yeah.
that brain down a little bit with all those thoughts that are racing through after addiction. So I think that's great. Now, there's no question a lot of people are affected by mental health issues. And I'm not even talking about politics and politicians. So I'm leaving them out. But I want to talk about depression, anxiety, anger, violence. We talked about gambling a little bit here because we're living in some really weird and hectic times.
Yeah.
Okay, how have you had an influx of people, or how are you dealing with this anger and hate that's going around?
It's in dealing with the anger and things. So we definitely have seen an influx. I think that, the whole, the pandemic, definitely, a lot of relationships that were maybe frayed a little bit to begin with, if you're stuck in the house together and so forth, it brought a lot of things to light. And the truth is, the entire world has experienced a complex trauma. I mean, that is the truth. There's not a single person that I'm aware of that the pandemic didn't affect their life in any way, shape, or form, or their job, or so we've definitely seen a lot of people where sometimes it's just strictly things related to the pandemic, experiences that they had, but also a lot of times it's where those experiences exacerbated something that was there before. Um, as far as like tackling those things, the first thing is it's important to acknowledge that it's a real thing that people go through. There's stigma attached to the mental illness, just like with addiction or anything else.
Hmm.
And people say, "Well, you just have to be stronger." Well, why are you letting that bother you? And it's like, well, it can't
It
really.
does.
Yeah, it's so. Um, what research shows works the best if it is a condition that's treatable by medicine is medicine in tandem with psychotherapy. Because the medicine addresses the chemicals in the brain and the biological things going on, but then in therapy we can address beliefs and coping skills and those things. Um, what I've found, this is just something that I've observed, with most of the clients that I've treated, for anger problems, what I found is more often than not, they need to be heard. There's a need to be heard. Um, Understand the dynamics of, like, here's something with just speaking of domestic violence that was really eye-opening for me. And when I put this together, it was like my bald head exploded. It was like, whoa, Legos in space. Um,
Mine's getting there.
so I always tell the guys in my groups, I say, okay, I'm going to run two scenarios by you. So let's say that we go into a restaurant and we're eating and we can hear two women talking at the booth behind us. And here's scenario one. The girl says to the other one, she says, "Oh, I'm telling you, girl, he's the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, he loves me, respects me. He treats me with respect. He lifts me up. I feel like 1 and 1 with us equals 3. I got to get out of this relationship." It's like, I'd be flipping around going, that doesn't make any sense at all. But here's scenario 2. "Oh, girl, he's lost his mind. He's going through my phone all the time. He doubles up asking me questions, trying to catch me up. He drives by work to see if I'm there. I'm scared to death of him. He's mean to me. He doesn't value me. I got to get out of this." Well, that makes total sense. But here's the mind-blowing part. Both men in both examples want the exact same thing. They want her to stay. And so that was really eye-opening for me, because I had never looked at, and there's no excuse. Domestic violence is a choice. There's no excuse for it. But I'd never understood those dynamics. And so we just talk about that there are 2 ways to maintain power. Only 2 ways: through integrity or through abuse. And that integrity is the way to go, and that's the legacy that I want to leave.
Unfortunately, men start to feel the only way is, I'm a man. That macho-ness
Yeah.
starts to step forward, and don't listen, I'll beat your head against the wall. And I shouldn't be joking about that, but you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the mentality. A lot of men. We live in Indiana. I'm sorry, Indiana. Please don't. But I've seen it in Pennsylvania. I should be fair. I saw it in Connecticut where I lived. It's happening everywhere, and I would think now with the stresses or stressors of inflation and the economy crashing just about at this point. You're right. COVID hit everybody. Okay, it hit my bank book hard. Okay, I was getting ready to open this big business and stuff, and then of course nobody wanted a website after that because nobody was open and there was no customers. So unless you had an online business, I lost a lot of customers and went out of business during that time. So I get it. People really have problems controlling anger.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it, like you say, in the restaurant, but I've actually seen where a man and a woman are in that booth behind me.
Mm-hmm.
The same scenarios taking place. And you're just waiting because you can hear from the guy's tone that that's about to explode.
Yeah.
And whether it explodes there in the restaurant or it explodes in the parking lot, it's about to happen. And that woman's not in a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I get what you're saying on there. Now, it's funny because we're getting to that again. In 2015, you were appointed by former Vice President Mike Pence, who was our governor at that time.
Yeah.
State of Indiana's Domestic Violence Prevention and Treatment Council. Later in the same year, Outstanding Batterers Intervention Professional of 2015 by the Indiana Coalition of Domestic Violence. The following year, on behalf of Life Recovery, you accepted an award for being Outstanding Community Partner 2016. Um, in addition to the work, you serve faculty, because you've been talking about teaching and stuff as well. So you're highly regarded. Now I know when we first started coming in, when you and I were first talking before the show, you're going back to school for even more.
Yeah, yep. I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, tell what are you going for this time?
So, so I'm going back for it's a professional doctorate in social work. So it's a doctor of social work, a DSW is what, but it's basically a professional doctorate in clinical social work. So it has um, a focus on trauma informed care. And I just, the truth is, I love to learn. I really do. And I had reached a point in kind of in my career where I just felt, um, I would not trade anything. I love my career. I love all of the different roles that I play. I mean, that's the truth. I love working with my clients. I love working with students. I love advocating, on a macro level, all that. And but I had reached a point, I just felt kind of like educationally stagnant is the only way I can describe it. And, through doing some self searching, your soul searching, I just kind of thought, well, you know what, maybe I'll go back to school. So that's, I thought about it for a while, but I really like it. I'm a student at Barry University in their Doctor of Social Work program, and I'm about halfway through right now. So it's a 3-year program, and I'm getting ready to start the second part.
So
Second
what
half.
does Erin say about all of this?
Oh,
To going back to school again? The
man, God
kids,
love her.
okay, really again?
Well, what's funny, I remember I was so excited when I'm actually on the board of the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence now. So
Mm-hmm.
they had an election, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll throw my hat in the ring, and I was elected. And I'll never forget. I called Erin. I was so excited. I'm like, Erin, I, I'm on the board of the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Can you believe it? And her response was, quit joining stuff. And I
Yeah.
mean, obviously we laughed about that, but um,
It's like how many nights a week is that going to take up?
yeah, yeah, it's just I stay busy. I mean, I really do, but that's part of my I don't know. I
It's
just
who
I
you
have
are.
Yeah, that's who I am. It's my drive. I have devoted my entire life to all of this, and there's nothing I would rather do. I'm
Okay,
actually the president, or not president. I'm the chairman of Mental Health America of Indiana. That
cool.
was a big honor.
Yes, that would be. So, okay, so you have not. I saw a video, and I promise I don't have it, so I won't put it up. Okay, you were playing guitar, but
Uh,
were you playing? If now, okay, if my research was right, okay, were you playing a song back from that group that I showed a picture of during that opening film?
Probably, possibly.
Yeah, because you had the name that was there. You were playing guitar on some video recently and singing.
Oh yeah.
Was that? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's something else that I've been as far as self care, it's really important. And as a musician, I've started recording again. So I'm not playing shows out or anything. Not at this time. But I love writing music and recording, and that's what I've been doing. I've been doing some solo stuff.
I've been knocking my brain for the last 2 days. I tried to track it down on your Facebook page. What was it? 11 minutes to Wapters? What was
Oh,
that?
yeah, okay. So yeah, I played. So I was in a cover band for a few years, and I played drums. And the band was called 5 Minutes to Wapner.
5 minutes to Wapner.
Yeah.
Okay. I went crazy trying to find it and couldn't find it.
Well, and they're still around. I Time constraints is the only reason that I quit playing out, but they're a great group of people.
Once you get I don't want to say it's like addiction, but it really is an addiction in itself, in probably the farthest sense from it. But once that blood is in your blood, you can't put it down. I
Yeah.
mean, even myself, I've been playing since I was 12, okay? And I still have a room full of guitars, basses, I have a keyboard. And she
Hmm.
said the other day, she goes, you know, if we decide to move or anything like that, she goes, what the hell are we going to do with all of this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, but some of that stuff is my children.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a Les Paul I've had since 1976. Cut off my right arm before that's going somewhere out
Yeah.
of this house. I don't care what it's worth now. Okay, that's my child. So, yeah, I get that. You know, you might put it down, but I guarantee you, somewhere around your house is a set of drums
Yeah.
that's set up. See, I
Yep.
can't see it, and I've never been to his house, folks. But I can guarantee you, somewhere in this house, there's a set of drums that's set up that he still.
Just off camera over there.
Yeah, I wanted to say it was off camera, but yeah, I kind of figured that there was a set of drums there.
Yeah.
So I told you before the start of the show that I was going to ask you about Andy Star.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now Andy's going to be a guest on our show coming up soon. Talk to us a little about Andy, so we can get a little bit of the gossip on him before he comes up.
Andy Sar he's one of a kind, and I know that you've met him, but anyone who hasn't met him, when they meet him, everybody agrees he's one of a kind, and he's a great storyteller. He's a really nice guy. Um, I know him as a friend of my parents. My parents play bluegrass, and Andy plays bluegrass, so they
No,
definitely
they don't play bluegrass music.
they definitely see each other in the social circles. But Andy is somebody that honestly, like, I could just sit and talk to him for hours. He's an interesting person. He really is.
So for the people that are wondering, okay, who's this guy Andy we're talking about? Andy was someone, and he probably still does, have IPF because it doesn't go away, even with the double lung transplant. But he did one of us that was able to get that second lease on life and get that double lung transplant, put the cannula aside, and start to enjoy life again. As I joked with him, the very first thing I said to him, I was like, I'm pissed at you. And he goes, why? I said, because you've had this on, but you can fly. And I can't fly anymore. I can't travel anywhere. I want to go back to the Bahamas at least one last time. And I got to wait till I get a lung transplant before I'm going to be able to fly down there because there's no more airplanes for me. That's over with for us. So, he's now living life again. I think he's the bass player at the Bartholomew County Symphony Orchestra as well. I don't know what he was doing the last time I talked to him, on top of a roof fixing an air conditioner in Seymour, Indiana, on top of a
That's
Mexican
Andy.
restaurant. Yeah. He's like, you never guess where I am now. I was like, try me, okay? What the heck, okay? But,
And
you know,
here's something, and you should bring this up when you talk to him. I
okay.
will never forget. This is years ago, but my dad had one of Andy's business cards, and I always thought it was hilarious. It said, um, "Banjos and brains picked." I thought that was awesome. I was like, man, that
Yeah,
is
that,
cool.
that actually, well, yeah. Yeah, that's good. That would work for you. That's a guitar and
Yeah.
brains picked for yours. Yeah. So, okay, so what does, and this is going to be a really good final question here. What does 2023 hold for Eric Davis?
Well, hopefully, school continuing to go great. um, I really hope that 2023, from a business standpoint, I'm really hoping that more clients will uh, come back into the offices. We have a huge virtual treatment program, but I to some degree I miss the interaction. I miss sitting in a room with the clients, and I don't get
But
to
do
do
you
that.
think that's going to come back?
I hope so. You know, I
I
know
do
this
too, but I
time.
don't think it's going to happen for a while. I
Yeah.
mean, number one, people have gotten comfortable,
Mhm.
doing it from their own home. So, like you say, if there's that stigma, they're not seen going into a place like that.
Yeah.
And number two, they're talking about round whatever of COVID again.
Mhm.
My it's already gone. I'm glad I'm out here in Indiana, but in New York, my brother's had it. His daughter's had it. His wife has it, and my dad, who just turned 91, he had it last week. So it's making its rounds again. So I don't know if we're going to be going back to that again. I think it's going to be a while that we're still taking big steps back.
Yeah. I agree with you. You know, I just hope that the our agency is on a good it's a good trajectory. You know, we've been around since 2004, and um, I my hope is that 2023 is going to kind of bigger and better almost. If that that's my goal, is to continue to expand on the things we have, and I hope to publish my second book
Well,
this
you'll
coming.
be back when your second book. We at least took care of the first half, and what is the working title again? Right now,
It's
I know it said in the intro.
it's Drunk Dad, Sober Dad.
Okay.
So, and just a preview, if anyone's interested. Growing up, I had I had an experience that most people don't get to have, in that I had um, my biological dad was an alcoholic, and my stepdad was not, and so I kind of got to, in real time, watch both lives. And it was a really important experience to see how addiction affected the family. And basically, I watched my biological dad, Ron, um, pretty much lose everything. He was a successful attorney, and basically alcohol took everything. And um, and my stepdad, and I consider him my dad, Russell.
Hmm.
He has everything money can't buy. And so it just was a really eye-opening. I learned so many lessons from just watching and observing them. And that's that's what the book is about.
I've seen firsthand with your interactions and Adam's interaction, even Cindel's for that matter. Okay, because I only met your other sister later on. But I can remember being at your grandparents' house for, I don't know if it was Cindel's birthday party or something like that in
Mhm.
North Vernon. I remember us all being down there, and you know, your grandfather was an excellent chiropractor over the years. I mean, I remember his funeral. I remember everybody coming in, and all I can remember hearing, I mean, there was a line too. I remember the line,
Yeah.
but all I can remember hearing was everybody say, "Oh, what a wonderful chiropractor he was. He was a great chiropractor. He was a great person too." But I mean, that the chiropractic theme over and over, and then your grandmother, who I adored all
Yeah.
along. I
Me
mean, she
too.
was a phenomenal person and stuff, and still missed this very day. It's unfortunate again. I would have got to see her more if COVID
Yeah.
hadn't come around, okay? And COVID changed everything.
Yeah. It
You
really
know,
did.
yeah. I mean, for everybody, I think that COVID, I don't know what its intentions were, what real intentions, what people were setting out to do, but whatever they set out to do, they accomplished it because they destroyed America. I mean, it's going to take us a real long time. As I said, I don't want to go into politics of it, but it's going to take us a long time to recover from the effects. I mean, myself, Jen and I were about to open a like a spa in
Wow.
Greensburg. Okay, I mean, we're going to do cryotherapy, everything. I mean, we had massage, Reiki. I mean, we had it all
Oh,
set
wow.
up, and I lost all this money that I put down. I mean, we're talking large sums of money because obviously, right after COVID hit, who the heck was going to go to a spa
Yeah.
at that point? You know, so we lost it all. I mean, I took a beating that I didn't want to take. So yeah, I see it in everyone. I see it in everyone's business. Someone like you were able to keep going
Yeah.
because you could do stuff virtually, like we're doing now. I've seen it with even Jen is a psychic medium. So she can still do her teachings or her readings right the way we're doing it here. Even though some people come by the house and stuff, but we do enough of these paranormal cons, the paracons as they're called, and I just watched the attendance go from like 5,000 people would come through to like about 300.
Yeah.
You know, because people are afraid to be out. And even at those things, how many people are walking around with a mask on? You know, you don't know. You're not around me. You don't know every time I cuss, I got to go in for a test in the hospital or something. It's like I got to put this friggin' thing on again. But yeah, it's the way it is. So, but anyway, Eric, I want to thank you for joining us here tonight. Tell everybody there is a website. Tell everybody what the website is.
You can, so my website is thebibleandrecovery.com, and there's also liferecoverycenter.net.
Okay, and I will put both of those up in the description there, so if somebody wants to see them. And again, you can go off to the website. You can get a link right there and go right over to purchase the book if you want to, or you can go right through the website as you just mentioned and purchase the book. And you know, the same way, if there's any ministers or anything out there that'd like to get in touch with Eric, contact me. I'll make sure that I pass you along to him. And again, I want to end the show very importantly. If there's anybody out there that's listening, okay, that has a drug problem or an alcohol problem, any kind of addiction problem, okay, it's nothing to be embarrassed about to go get help. Okay, you talked about the stigmatism, that people are afraid of work. Okay, oh yeah, and then I'm going to remember, yeah, forget about all of that.
Yeah.
What's important is, I look at it, you know what, you go back and you tell those people, yeah, but you see, I was strong enough to go get help and become a better person. Okay? And that's how I would spin it for myself, just so it would be a positive thing. And if you're a family member, like if you're a mom or a dad or brother, or even a good friend of someone that has a problem, do your best to try to get them help. Because there's going to come a point where one day they may go too far, and then it's too late. And then you're going to say, why didn't I do something about this earlier? So step forward now. Now is the time. Get help for them. And as I say again, you know, if you want to contact Life Recovery Center if you're here in Indiana, or, you know, look up one in your area and get help. Okay, because I'm sure there's many like yours that will help somebody that may not have insurance, may have nothing left. Okay, you're going to turn someone's life around. So, Eric, thank you for joining us. Don't go anywhere right now. So, but to everyone, thank you for joining us. And if my memory serves me correct, because I did not look it up before the start of the show, okay, I know we do have a very, very interesting guest next week. And you'll know him from Ghost Hunters International. And we're going to be talking about his book as well. So we're going to definitely have my little Irish cap on for that one as well. So, but thanks everybody for joining us tonight. And remember, hit the like button and subscribe button. And we hope to see you soon.